Aloha, and welcome to SUP FM, the podcast for stand-up paddleboarders everywhere. So with no further ado, let's get out on the water and on with the show. Here are your hosts, Nick and Simon.
Good morning on a bright and sunny autumn/winter morning. It's almost December here down in Portugal, and the three boys, the three adventurers that we've just been on a trip, actually not just, in September the 21st of 2020, myself, Chris Greby, and Tom Longhurst went on a 160 kilometer long jaunt across the Algarve on our stand-up paddleboards. We were slightly assisted by some mates of ours over the first few days because we really wanted to try and push it because we didn't have that much time and we wanted to try and do it within 5 days. So we set out early on the Monday morning from Sagres in the southwestern tip of Portugal and paddled 160 kilometers all the way across in 4.5 days. It was a fantastic trip and we really thoroughly enjoyed it. And we hope that you'll find it inspiring to go out and do something like this yourself, because there's nothing better than starting off with an overnight trip and then a couple of overnight trips and then building in a proper adventure and doing it. Because it's like the adventure of a lifetime. You don't have long, just you got to do this. You got to do this. It really is so much fun. If you do it with the right crew, you'll have a well over time. And hopefully you'll pick up on that when we talk about our trip. And hopefully you'll learn a little bit and hopefully, obviously, we'll inspire you to go and do something like this. But if you have any questions or anything, just jump onto our Instagram at SUPFM Podcast and ask us questions. We'd love to know all about it because we'll be posting a few pictures of this trip on the Instagram, and then you'll be able to ask questions in the comments below. So thanks once again for listening, and don't forget to check out our SUPFM water safety course over at supfm.thinkific.com. And if you're struggling with that link, just go to supfm.show and there are links directly through there. All right, here are the guys. So welcome to the SUPFM podcast, gentlemen. We have Mr. Nick Robinson, which is myself, and Mr. Chris Greby. Could you say your name, please?
Hi, my name's Chris Greby, and yeah. I'm trying to think what else I need to say.
No, that's cool, just so people can identify your voice. And Tom Longhurst.
Hey guys, Tom Longhurst here.
It's great to have you, Tom.
Much cooler.
And guys, so yeah, just for a little bit of background, we all know each other really well because we paddled. We knew each other before we paddled across the Algarve, but we had a lot of fun paddling across the Algarve as well. So this might be a bit of a laugh, which I hope you enjoy too. And no inside jokes, boys. Okay.
What happened on the paddle stays on the paddle, right?
Well, yeah, except for this podcast, of course. But what I'd like to try and do is for all you guys out there is just to explain to you how we prepared for it, and then just take it, like some stories of the trip as we go chronologically, and then what lessons we drew from it and what we thought of, how worthwhile it was, etc. That may be a little bit of an empty corner, but hey, let's go for it. So let's kick off with the preparation. I think, Chris, you were the most experienced lad along and decided to do a kit list, which was very prepared of you. Where did you get that idea from?
I think from a mate of mine, a guy called Nick Robinson.
Oh, yeah? And
no, it was when we started looking at how much we were going to take, it sort of made sense, I think, for the three of us not to all be taking the same stuff or redundant stuff. So I guess by producing a list, we were able to start whittling down what was important, what wasn't important, who was going to carry the bulk of the food, or whether we were going to split the food between us, tents, and all that kind of thing. And I'm sure we're going to get onto the conversation of who brought what for sleeping in.
Absolutely. I think sleeping, well, let's just kick straight. But first of all, before that, the way we did collaborate, because a lot of us were, some of us, not a lot of us, were in lockdowns and it was difficult. So we collaborated with a Google document, which can be very confusing for some people.
Yeah, pen and paper is always the best way.
I thought we said no inside jokes.
Sorry, yeah, Tom, well done, man. We really appreciate you getting into Google, and welcome to the world. It's awesome.
No worries.
But look, yeah, let's talk about sleeping first of all, because obviously sleeping on a multi-day expedition is quite critical. And personally, I like to sleep comfortably when I'm on these things, because So how about you, Tom? What did you think about sleeping, and what regarding kit?
I've done lots of nights on the beach, but like you said, I don't think I've ever done consecutive nights especially after 10, 12 hours of exercise and then sleeping. I've always done just a jolly paddle and then a camp on the beach. But talking to you two and getting some stuff that I'd already had with me, I think I didn't want to bring too much. It's a really fine line between carrying too much and being really comfy. So the blow-up mattresses were a godsend because you never quite know whether you're going to be on soft sand or just breaking that barrier up between whatever you're on and yourself, even if it's just not for comfort, just for getting you off the surface. I think the blow-up mattress was a definite must, looking back at it all, whether it was an inch thick or you had your double duvet and double bed scenario.
Yeah, I bought one of those things from Decathlon, which you blow up. I had to manually blow it up because I didn't want to bring a pump with, and it was only about $7, and it was plastic, but it was great, and it really lifts you off the ground. Yours was rather more advanced, I think. Didn't you have that slightly inflatable padded mattress? Where is it from? Arc or something?
Yeah, it was. It was also from Decathlon, actually, but it was sort of $40. But it was a tenth of the size, and yeah, it was amazing. It was 2 seconds to blow up, and it was so comfy. It was brilliant. It was well worth the extra few bucks, I think.
And pillows? Did you bring pillows? Because I brought an inflatable pillow, it's brilliant. It's like a baby's armband.
I didn't, but luckily you had two, so it was perfect. But actually, after the first night of sleeping with a pillow of clothes, and then you pulled out the second blow-up pillow, that was also superb.
How about you, Chris? I mean, you ended up sleeping naked on the sand, right?
Oh, it was a beautiful experience. The best thing I think I packed was an actual mini fabric pillow. Oh, every single night. Beautiful night's sleep. That, and I think my key difference was bringing the correct shelter on account of the weather forecast for night 3, I think it was, or night 4. I can't remember, Tom. Which night was that it
Definitely
rained?
night 3. Yeah,
well, we'll go through the whole trip chronologically a little bit later, but I think
absolutely.
Whether you bring, I think both of you guys brought tents, right?
So I brought a little one-man bivvy tent, which was purchased off Amazon about a day before we went for about $50, I think, and it was brilliant.
That's a little tip for you guys out there. If you're going to order things from Amazon, especially in these current times, just make sure that you allow a lot of lead time, because some items didn't come and other items just gave us a bit of an ulcer when they arrived the day before or the night before.
Yeah. But well worth it. And this thing was probably, it was smaller than the actual inflatable mattress, the tent, to carry. It didn't take up much space at all. So definitely worth its weight in gold.
And I think with tents as well, the good thing about tents is they keep mosquitoes and all kinds of chochas, as we call them in South Africa, off you. I opted for a bivvy bag, which I love because then I can see the stars and it's just great. It rained a little bit, as you said, on night 3, and all the rain just ducked right off me. It's great. Loved it.
Oh, likewise. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I had borrowed a top of the end tent. I think it was about $600, 2-man sleeping, which is unbelievably light. But in my naivety, I thought I would not pack the outer layer because we live on the Algarve and it sun shines 365 days. But on that day, it did rain, so I didn't take the outer layer. And my tent filled up like a bit of a bucket. So although I saved 5 grams of weight on my paddleboard, I ended up getting quite wet. But yeah, I said before, it's a real fine line between how much weight you carry and how important that piece of kit is, I suppose.
Yeah, and you mentioned the weather. I mean, because we were going on the 21st of September and sort of basically midsummer in the Algarve, or the tail end of summer in the Algarve, we didn't really have to worry about being warm, although at nights it got a little bit chilly. And I think wherever you're camping, it obviously does matter what the conditions are doing for what kind of clothing you wore. But what we just took, we didn't take any wetsuits or anything like that. We just took night clothes and baggies and things to paddle in. We were paddling mostly topless, dare I say.
Yeah, although when you say, I looking back at it, and I know it sounds crazy, but I didn't take any footwear as such, although we took flip-flops, but I didn't. Socks would have been a godsend, because when you're paddling soaking wet for 10, 12 hours, and then you're on the beach, your feet are still wet, and then you've got another however many hours sleeping, I think a pair of socks that your feet are dry just for those few hours, because in the end it ended up 5 days of wet feet, and all sorts of things start going on in between your toes. So I think a pair of socks would have been a really helpful, which I hadn't even thought of before we set off.
I should have told you. Yeah, I loved my socks. I really enjoy them whenever I sleep.
Yeah.
Thank you. I could have lent them to you if you wanted to, but they had
Actually,
3 days
now you
old.
mention it. My nice warm fluffy socks were wonderful every night.
There we go. Those pre-kit meetings were worth waiting on.
Now, a lot of people might wonder what kind of boards you're going to take, because this paddle, just to put it in context for you guys out there, it's 160 kilometers long, and we were doing about 30 to 45 kilometers a day. So what kind of boards should you use? What kind of boards did you think about using, Tom or Chris?
Well, the obvious one is, what boards do you have to hand? And I had the option of two. I had a starboard which was 25 inches wide, and on our training paddles, actually, we went out on quite a rough day, the three of us in Port de Moche near Lagos, and I quickly found out that wasn't going to be ideal after rough conditions, and actually we had no kit on that day, and seeing you two stable as on slightly wider boards, it was really good, those pre-training in different conditions, and I ended up going with a C4 board, which was just 3 inches wider, but it made all the difference on the trip.
Yeah, but if anyone's got any doubts, I mean, just go for a touring board. That's why they're called touring boards, is because they obviously they're like race boards, 12.6 or 14 foot, or sometimes 13.2 in if you're looking at a red paddleboard. And it doesn't matter whether it's an inflatable or a hard board, but I think you definitely want to go for something quite long and fairly narrow, maybe 27, 28, 29 inches wide, depending on how big you are.
Yeah, I mean, the 27 that I took, it's great without too much weight on it. But as soon as you start loading it up, it just starts developing that little bit of instability. Mm-hmm. But if you're an experienced man like yourself, Nick, it's not a problem, I guess. But
no, well, I had a 29 inch, didn't I? That's my experience told me to go wide because I'm really big.
Yeah. So I'd say definitely go wide. Don't be afraid of having a bit of width to the board. If you're going to take kit for 5 nights, I think it's a huge advantage. Yeah, and also as well, I mean, talking about the boards, is creating the system for actually latching the bags onto the board. It's all very well having a fancy board, but if you've got no way of strapping the bags to it, that can become a bit of an issue.
So what did you do? Because you had a fancy board. It was actually a race board, even though it's 27 inches wide. What did you do to try and... Tell us the story, Chris.
Oh, it felt terrible cutting into the the foot padding. But actually, it worked perfectly. You can buy little boating... What would you guys call them? Yeah, just like little rubber eyelets or rubber bases with metal eyelets in, and epoxy resin them onto the board. It works perfectly. Half a dozen of those on the board with a bit of bungee.
I mean, look, you say it works perfectly, and it did work perfectly for us, but we didn't have to go through any bad conditions at all. And if we had hit bad conditions, we're wondering if our boards had popped, would have come. I mean, our baggage would have come off. But Tom, did you do the same thing? You just epoxied in some similar.
Yeah, similar. I had a company do it for me. I think it was €70 in the end to put 6 or 8 lugs on. But yeah, they were from outboard rib hull. Connectors. So yeah, the rib company that were, using the right glue. I really do think they would have held. They were super strong in the end. It was. I think they would have been enough, even if we'd hit bad conditions with the rib. They were quite big lugs, although the eyelets were small. The lugs themselves that they glued on were brilliant.
Mm-hmm. But I just think for you guys out there, if you do hit bad conditions, or if you're anticipating bad conditions, I've never tried this, but I would imagine, I've always been struggling with this concept because we hit bad conditions when we first did it in 2015, and it just ripped all our D-rings off our boards, and they were like manufactured onto inflatables. and they also ripped the cords as well, just because the waves were just ripping off the baggage. And I just think if you had, those things where you attach your board to the roof of your car and you put those all the way around the board, I think that would probably be the only way. I was also dreaming up of sort of hydrodynamic shapes on the top of the board to put your baggage in, kind of like that guy. What is his name? He went across the Atlantic, old South African from Cape Town. What is his name again?
There aren't that many famous South Africans, I think.
All right, so let's move on to, obviously paddles are vitally important. We don't have to go into that. But sponsorship and charity and then the associated marketing with that. At the last minute, Tom, you suggested we go with a charity. How did that come about?
I just think if you're going to do anything like this, even if it's smaller or bigger distance, I think it would just be a shame not to do it for a charity. And also, I think for our motivation as much as anything, when you're on the water and there is long days and it's inevitable parts of it, you think, why on earth are we doing this? Because it's great fun overall, but there's parts where you really could easily stop and give up. And I think having something like that in the back of your mind, saying we're doing it for a reason, is a great way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And what charity did we eventually? Can you just tell us about the charity that we eventually supported?
Yeah, well, it's a charity in Portimao that supports a wide range of mainly disabled, mainly kids, but we chose to go for an older gentleman who was a disabled sailor. And I think through the COVID scenario, he'd been almost left off the list of charities. He'd had a grant for a boat to go into the Olympics, I think it was, or at least to sail in the European Championships. But he needed to raise X amount of euros before he could get the grant, and the boat is incredible. So he didn't actually need that much money to enable him to be able to get this fantastic boat. So it was hopefully a small achievement that we got to. And now he's able to buy his boat and sail in the European Championships next year, we hope.
And I think that really brought the whole trip together, because that forced us to get a tracker. And I was on the phone to Dave Walker from Paddle Logger beforehand trying to organize this, and we had a backup plan and all kinds of stuff. And then when we were driving out on the first night to drive down to your place in Sagres, which we'll get to now, I handed the phone over to Chris and said, look, I'm driving. Could you sort out the tracking? And so did you do that, Chris?
I did.
Tell us how it went down.
Honestly, I think the tracking was one of the best things of the whole trip.
I agree.
I know when the three of us just started chatting, we're like, hey, let's just do it. It'll be fun. And then, as you just said, we got the sponsorship. And we started talking about if we could track it somehow, whether just putting points on a Google map as we went. And when we landed on the paddle tracker, live tracking, honestly, I think this was the real coup of the trip, which I know we'll get onto later on. But having more people than I expected, following us online, and then people we'd never even met coming out to meet us as we went across the Algarve was such a boost.
It was
I
amazing,
think that was one of the best parts of it. That and the fact I didn't have to talk to you two for about an hour was huge.
And how did you find the technology itself, Paddle Logger?
Brilliant. Hugely recommend it. Actually, I've recommended it to quite a few people since then. Initially, it probably sounds like quite an odd thing, tracking a paddle, because you're either just sort of going around, a lot of people just go around lakes or around a local bay. But actually, if you start getting into it and you track the distances you're doing and the speed you're doing, just like a run, jog, walk, cycle tracker, it just helps you to improve your paddling. And it's well worth it, 100%.
But and
not just for what we did.
Yeah, in respect of the trip that we did, I know a lot of people were waking up every morning saying, "Where are they? Have they started paddling yet?" Whatever, and they were checking it out, and it's great because it gives people a lot more. I don't know, just includes them a lot more into our trip. It's not just us going for a jolly on the Algarve, like you said, Tom. It gives it a bit more gravity.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not entirely sure. You'll know more, Chris. But doesn't it have a safety feature on it as well? So as soon as you log on and then finish your paddle and log off, obviously a lot of the times, if I'm training, I go out by myself, and I'm sure you two do as well.
Yeah.
It's a real, and quite often I'm out on the water, and I haven't told even my wife where I've been. So it doesn't do that when you log off? It registers.
Exactly. So what you do is
absolutely.
you register contacts, and then it gives you a certain amount of time. If you're not back at a certain amount of time, then it'll automatically send a message to your contacts. But you can also press a digital flare. I'm not sure if that's on the free version or the premium version, but you can press a button that sends a digital flare to your contacts, and then they can contact the authorities if they need to.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. It's like anything can happen anywhere, and especially on the water. Even the fittest of people can get into trouble for any reason. I think it's an amazing, the Stravas of the world on cycling are great, but I think if any time you're going to track yourself, I think on water is brilliant.
Yeah, and Paddle Log is designed for people with wet fingers and big buttons, so you can't miss.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really sharp. But talking about safety, Chris, what did you think about the safety beforehand? Were you a little bit scared?
No, we had you along. I didn't have anything to worry about. Big South African fella.
Well, that's easy, isn't it? It's like, so, okay.
It's like, doesn't matter what.
What if you were going on your own? What if you
I
were
was going on my own?
Would it have looked completely different the whole trip? I mean, it would be a bit more scary. It really would be.
Not at all. I mean, we all brought sort of inflatable jackets. We obviously had paddle loggers we talked about. At no point were we a huge distance from the coast, and we're all very familiar with the Algarve. So between the three of us, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a different story. Let's say we all got to go and said, right, we're going to go and paddle around the Scottish Hebridean Islands. Totally different experience. We've been down here for years. We know the condition of the water here. We know how quickly it can change. So from that point of view, we're all in a place where we were comfortable. None of us were really pushing ourselves outside of a comfort zone as regards safety or weather, just endurance.
I agree. But also when we were chatting, I can remember, I don't know what day it was, but we were chatting and saying 3 seemed almost the perfect number to paddle with.
Yeah.
One got in trouble, there'd be 2 of us to help. And I think any more than 3, then you're complicating matters just because you've got a lot of people to deal with if something does go wrong. But I think the 3 of us, it worked really well.
I agree. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, okay, cool. So let's get into the second half and go for the trip itself and just go chronologically because it was 5 days. So let's start off with day 0, driving down to Sagres when we were supposed to be leaving at 3 p.m. and everyone was hanging around waiting for us. Like my mate Philippos from the Greek restaurant donated his time very kindly with his 2 girlfriends that he brought along with. And we were just waiting and waiting and waiting. And there was no Chris Grebby.
Oh, really? What happened there? Was he buying last-minute supplies for you?
Potentially.
Was he completing your decathlon shopping list?
So anyway, sorry, bro. Without dropping you in the cack too much, we eventually got on track and went down to Tom's house where he's got Tom's got a whole bloody estate going on down there. He's got a little sort of a little apartment on the beach and a mansion up in the hills. It's fantastic. So thanks very much for the hospitality, Tom.
The wonders of podcast, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I'm situated the other end of the Algarve where we started almost, 25k from east of Sagres. So it was a good base just to get everyone together, do a last minute check of all our kit, and then have an early night and ready for a drive up to Sagres.
Those few beers that we had that night before at a beautiful little place in Bergamo was quite sort of set the tone for the whole trip, I think.
Yeah, definitely, and also like a true Algarvian little fishing village. It was nice to maybe get away from the hustle and bustle of eastern Algarve and start where we kind of were really going to start from. I know we were 25k, but it felt this area of the Algarve is very different to where we were going to finish. So it was a nice beginning, I think.
It was lovely, yeah. And then how did you feel, Tom, the first morning when we woke up at 4 a.m. or something?
It was 4, yeah, 4 a.m. I was excited. I hadn't slept much. It's a weird thing going. It was for me. It was a first doing something like this. So it was a lot of unknowns. I knew you two, but I'd never been on the water for 10 hours with you two, so that was an unknown. But yeah, it was really exciting, and doing something in the dark and getting all your kit ready and making fingers crossed you remembered everything. It was good, really good.
Yeah, I just posted that photograph of the three of us on Martinel Beach. I think I'm not sure, it's probably not called Martinel Beach, but it's right down there near Sagres on the beach.
Yeah.
Just before we left, and it brought back amazingly good memories, because I remember striking out onto the water after, because there's all this sort of pent up energy or angst when you're trying to get everything right and make sure you not forget everything, and then you get on the water, you think, oh, it's amazing. I don't know, I felt like that. How did you feel, Chris?
It was a beautiful morning. It was dark, glassy water. We were just in the bay there, and it was fantastic. And then I saw you with your pent up energy, letting it loose. And I remember thinking in that first 30 minutes, I'm not going to keep up with these guys. This is going to be impossible. I mean, honestly, you were out there like a bullet out of a gun, man. And it was awesome. It was the real drive to get us going.
It must be quite a disconcerting feeling, thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to keep up with these guys?
No, I just figured, an endurance runner and a sprinter would catch up eventually. But no, it was definitely, because, I've done a few big paddles. I can be out in the water all day. I know you've done it before. Met Tom, and he's this sort of super fit triathlon athlete. And then there's me, and I was like, okay, boys, let's see how this goes. But no, I think after the first hour, the three of us all very quickly got into a pace each day that complemented each other. But that first run out of Sagres, I was thinking, ooh, this actually could be quite a challenge ahead of me.
And then Tom took us into those beautiful Ingrina caves as we went probably, an hour or 2 hours in and we couldn't believe the time we were making because it was so glassy. Tom, you knew that area really well, right? You paddled down there a lot.
Yeah, pretty well. Yeah. Although I don't paddle Sagres area too much, but I had paddled there, quite a few times. But it's not my regular paddle. But it is an amazing, almost not untouched part of the world for paddling. But because it's known as a bit of a wilder end of the world, it can get really, really rough. Strong rips around Martinel Island. We were really lucky that morning. I've done that paddle before, and it rips you right round the other side of the island, and then you're in deep, deep water where there's tuna farms, and it can get messy around there. But we were really lucky that morning, and we knew we had to stay close to the headland that first 3 or 4 hours. But those caves you mentioned, the huge smuggling caves that were used for hundreds of years, they deep, amazing coloured water, incredible caves, amazing.
Yeah, fantastic, phenomenal. And then we headed past, I always get it wrong, I think it's Algarve first, and then Salema, or is it the other way?
Salema first, yeah, Salema first. We did Ingrina, Zavial, and then, the more populated areas, Salema first, and actually that's where our first group met us, I believe, coming out of...
Yeah.
Which was thanks again to the tracker. That was a real shock, I think, for all of us, just to suddenly see friendly faces come out to the water and meet us.
Yeah, the guys from Ocean Blue Active, Lucy and Izzy, came to paddle with us, which was fantastic. Really, really, really good fun. And like you said, it was amazing to see friendly faces and that we know and people meeting us because of the tracker, that they could find out exactly where it was from. And by that time, sun had come out and it was absolutely glassy. It was just the most, I don't think I've ever seen weather like that in the Algarve for a solid 4 days, because it kept on like that for the next 4 days. And then, were you guys feeling a little bit anxious about trying to do 45 kilometers on our first day? Because I certainly was. That's why I was probably pushing ahead, trying my best. But we were greeted in Portimao by a crazy nutter sounding a horn, like a conch. So this is after the whole thing. Portimao was our final destination. Tom had organized a night on a tall ship called Maybe. And we were also wondering maybe whether we'd make it or not. But we got there at about 3:30, I think, in the afternoon. So it was a pretty easy jaunt. We had a little bit of wind beforehand. But then arriving in Portimao, how'd you guys feel?
I think we were all shocked at our pace and our progress. It was, we were a bit, I think, an early start, no sleep. So when we hit that... the channel coming into Portimao Harbour, it was a real relief, I think, that we'd made it, because that first night was a goal. The rest of the trip, we were going to end up where we ended up each night. But that was our goal, to make it to the tall ship that was moored up about 2k up the channel. So it was a big relief and a great surprise to see the charity, which are based in Portimao, come and meet us. It was a really, really nice surprise.
Yeah, and they haven't actually sent us those photographs yet, have they?
No, they haven't, no.
Yeah, good point. But Chris, do you want to take us through day 2 from Portimao all the way along those caves through to Villamora, which is your neck of the woods?
Oh, yeah. So, well, waking up on the deck of a tall ship next to you two was certainly an interesting experience. I'll put that as a one-off. But that was amazing. I think I managed to get a good sort of 2 or 3 hours sleep that night, so I didn't feel too bad. And honestly, it was such a nice morning, waking up on the deck of the boat. Again, glassy water. Very quick, got up, got some oats down us, some nuts, and I think we were on the water by, I'm going to say about 6:30 in the morning, I think, weren't we?
Absolutely,
so
before sunrise, yeah.
Probably the biggest challenge that day was getting 3 12-foot-6 boards off the quay into the water, which was, I'm going to say, a good, 8-foot drop, without any of us falling in or any kit falling in. So I think that was a pretty solid achievement.
Well done.
And then, the run out of Portimao was, it was lovely. All morning was glassy. I think the end of that first day, there was just a couple of hours of chop, and it was the same the second day, running all the way to Albufeira. And again, we've got a lovely bit of coastline that you and I paddle along quite a lot, don't we, Nick? With, dozens of little caves, big ones, little ones. Obviously, we've got Benagil, the cathedral cave, was on day 2, which was a nice little coffee stop. I'm surprised, actually, the boys haven't brought up the coffee situation yet, but I'm sure one of them will.
Yes, someone was tasked to bring coffee, and it was Chris actually was tasked to bring the coffee along, and he didn't. And then he proceeded to moan about coffee the whole day and say, boys, I need a coffee. And Tom and I were joking, saying, yeah, no problem, we'll stop at the next beach. Because every beach there's a little, it's not like we're paddling through the wilderness here. Every beach there's a little cafe there. And we were saying, no, Chris, we'll stop at the next beach. And and then he'd be getting keen. He'd say, no, look, let's just make the next beach. And then we never actually did. I think we went without coffee for 2 days.
I think it was, Benagil. A day and a half into the trip, I got to have my first coffee.
Yeah. And then we got stung at Benagil, because Benagil is probably Portugal, actually. I know it's definitely one of the most popular tourist attractions in Algarve these days, due to some big photographs being posted around the internet. And it just sort of blew up and became this massive tourist attraction. And now you have to pay, I think we paid €10 for like 3 little coffees and 3 pastéis de nata, which are Portuguese custard tarts. It was expensive, wasn't it?
It was, but it was well worth it. A little bit of energy. And then each of those first 2 days, there were 2 big bays that we had to cross, which I think was something I probably hadn't done before, was a good 14-mile stretch away from the coastline to cut across from... before Amasteur de Pera. I don't know if that's pronounced correctly.
Well, the first section was Lagos to Portimao, yeah.
That was the first section, and then the second one skipping across from the end of the caves to the Albufeira headland.
Exactly, yeah. Amasteur de Pera too.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I was saying that's when the conditions were spot on for us. I think we really made up an awful lot of time there. We couldn't have done that with the chop that is normally on that bit of coastline.
On that section between Amasao de Pera and Albufeira, we were probably like a couple of kilometers off the coast, more, maybe 5, 6, I don't know. And all of a sudden, through the absolute sheer glassy water, you couldn't even see the horizon because it was all melting in together. And we saw this boat coming straight for us. And I think you guys were suddenly, well, hang on, is this guy going to turn or not? And it was my buddy from the beach concession who I used to rent boards to, and he was just coming to say hi and splashed us with his wake, and it was quite fun. So it was a bit concerning. But so when we arrived at this beach called Bello Rucas, which is right on the western edge of the Falaise beach, just other side of Albufeira, if you're looking at a map, we arrived at a beach bar, and your friend, the Irish guy, came down to help us commence activities.
Oh, good old Barry brought the beers. I think he was a little bit surprised that we'd made it that far in 2 days, to be honest. He was fully expecting to be quite a few miles back towards the west, meeting us on a beach somewhere.
And actually,
but
we haven't mentioned that the first day we had someone so we didn't travel with any of our kit on the first day. We had it delivered kindly to the tall ship. And again, on the second day, we had someone, Chris just mentioned, Barry, to bring our bags to the beach. So the first 2 days was a bit of a luxury paddle, although they had long distances. We were pretty lucky not to have any of our kit with us. We just took our day bags and water and a few snacks.
And it was fantastic to have Barry bring the bags at the end of the second day, but I kind of wished he hadn't, because he's Irish and he knows how to drink, and he got us going big time. So yeah, ... That was a pretty hectic night. I think we just sat on the beach, and then I remember waking up in the morning and getting all our stuff together with a slight hangover, and this guy, just these big lights coming out of nowhere, just driving up the beach. And I was like, what's going on? And then there's this big truck thing, and it sort of comes around, parks literally 4.5 centimeters away from my sleeping bag, and starts offloading all the garbage, which was right there because we were on a beach concession. So that was quite disconcerting. But I think we'd all finished our ablutions by then, so it was cool. So we struck out, and Tom, do you want to do day 3, day 4?
Cool. Day 3, it's a bit of a blur to me, day 3. You got to remind me of...
The Faro stretch, when we crossed over into the Ria, and...
Oh, yeah. Set off a similar time, didn't we? We were on the water by 7 again. You mentioned those big bays we went across. We did a few of those on the third day. And for me, I think they were the hardest parts of the day. Traveling past caves, through interesting environments is great. And often when you're near the caves, we did have quite a few people come out and see us, or we had vans on the top of the cliff beeping and waving. But those long sort of 5K stretches where you're looking towards the shore and you don't feel like you're actually moving was quite a mental thing for me. Quite often one of us or one of the group would paddle on ahead and have their kind of headspace, because it's a bit demoralizing just paddling for 5K and not feeling like you're moving. And those long beaches on the third day felt a bit like that to me. But right at the end of the day, you guys know that stretch of the Algarve really well, and we crossed over the dunes and entered the Ria Formosa, which was a massive relief for me. It felt like we were then on the river and a totally different environment, which lifted my spirits, I have to say.
And your wife arrived as well with a whole bunch of people, so that must have lifted your spirits too.
It did. It was amazing. Yeah. She was supposed to be at work in Lagos and took the day off, and I think there were 6 or 8 of them in the end that dropped in and all paddled to meet us. Lots of our friends are obviously keen paddleboarders, and they all I think they were more excited than us. It was a real adventure for them. They're still talking about it now. So it's and that was again, we keep mentioning it, thanks to Paddlogger. They would have never have known exactly where we were on a stretch of water 160k long. They knew to the 5-minute destination of where we were. It was amazing.
And that cake. That cake.
I was going to say, a big shout out to whoever made the brownies.
Amazing. Really, really good stuff. So after we headed into Portimao and we departed, because it actually was inside the Ria Formosa, the tides move really fast, and we were scooting down with your wife and all her friends and everything. It was great fun. We were all sitting talking, and suddenly we realized, well, chaps, you're not going to get back. So they weren't going to be able to paddle back against the tide. So they cruised off, and we split up, and they went and organized themselves, and we carried on to Ilha Culatra, which is an island, one of the barrier islands, and that's where we had lunch on one of those islands, I think. And then I was feeling really tired just before lunch. So I was really sort of battling exhaustion because we'd done a lot. And then when we get to Culatra, it was beautiful because it was almost like a desert island, complete. And we set up camp. We had a swim and discovered that there were 4 or 5 jellyfish floating around right there next to us. And we weren't swimming in wetsuits, so it was a close call. And then there was some crazy French people running around. What is that all about, Chris?
I think they were just having a little nighttime barbecue right on the tip of the little island. And that was about the point at which, I can't remember who it was, enlighten us to the fact that we'd drunk all the beer. And we were beginning to open up negotiations with the French to try and go across with their boat to get some more beer. They wouldn't have any of it. So that was actually a fairly sober evening, if I remember.
No, not for the French people, because I think they were trying to get on their boat and they fell back right on their asses because they were so drunk.
But I think for us to have paddled across there then would have been quite tricky, because that current at the best of times is pretty bad. To try and do it at 10, 11 o'clock at night would have been, trying to get back would have been a little bit extreme.
Yeah, treacherous, because a few fishermen have actually died at that point. We call them a barinha, but it's an opening to the ocean, and the tide just shunts through there. According to the law of 12ths, of course, chaps.
Oh, yes. It was a very educational trip.
Well, I did a water safety course, stand-up paddle water safety course through SUP FM, as many of you listeners will know. And I was trying to share my knowledge with the boys, but they weren't having any of it. So we paddled on. And then the next morning, that was when it rained that night. And it was great. I couldn't believe how well my bivvy worked. It's just all the water just slid right off. Loved it.
Likewise with my tent. The fly sheet was just luxury. Dry as, absolutely dry.
And poor old Tom was in a puddle again. No, that was the first time you were sleeping in a puddle, weren't you? Yeah. The next night was quite interesting. We've got to get to the next night when we were running. Right. So okay, let's just go there, shall we? So, we'd had a few beers, and it was, the next night, and because obviously we hadn't had any beers this night on the desert island. So we paddled the.
Oh wait, no, you can't skip Thursday. We've got to talk about the
go for it.
trek when we're halfway down the rear and somebody goes, "We might have got the tide wrong on this bit, boys."
Schoolboy error, absolutely. So the tide had emptied out from the Rio Formosa because it's highly tidal, and when the tide empties out there, it's just mud flats. And Tom was getting quite MacGyverish and decided to. What is the end solution?
Tom? Well, no. The problem was we were in water that was only about 1 inch to 2 inches deep.
Yeah.
So, and it was a good trek between where we were to the open water. So I think between the three of us, we came to a decision, didn't we? We'll try and push on. And you and I had FCS fins. So we just popped them off with a key, but one of us didn't.
So
we struggled and we tried. Yeah, go ahead.
And I think all these things are a big learning curve, but so it's very different when the water is 6 inches deep and you've just got your board, because you can just pop it on your shoulder and hike it out of there. But we had a lot of kit, in the end, I suppose you've just got to do what you've got to do, and luckily the guys, we split bags up, and the guys took my kit on their boards, and I ended up paddling my board upside down with the fin pointing up. But it got us probably 2k down the river. We still had a big trek to do by dragging the boards, but those 2k probably it was awkward and looked ridiculous, but it did get us to a point where it would have taken ages to walk out of there. So
Tom,
yeah.
Do you realize that photograph has gone viral and has 175,000 views?
No, it's
of you upside down on a paddleboard. I'm just kidding, bro. I'm just kidding. But it is quite treacherous because in that mud, and you're pushing boards along, it's great if you're paddling, but if you're pushing your board along, your feet really sink into the mud, and there's all kinds of sharp shells and all kinds of stuff in there that just lacerates your legs. And I know we all had cuts and all down our legs after that night. But I think one thing that was driving me was that in Praia Verde, which is the green beach in English, was our destination that I had put in our minds. And I thought we had to get to this bar where I knew they had the cocktail called a Moscow Mule, which I really enjoy. And it was just driving me. I was keeping saying to you guys, hey, we've got to get Moscow Mules. We've got to get Moscow Mules. And eventually, after the most unbelievably beautiful evening, it was stunning, wasn't it? Paddling through those jellyfish.
Amazing. It was our longest day on the water, I think. It was 12 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But we had that in our sights, and it was every 5 meters there was a jellyfish as wide as the board. It was incredible.
And the colours were phenomenal. I mean, they were like purple and blue and stunning, really beautiful. So sunset on the water, and we eventually made it to Praia Verde. And unbeknownst to us, lockdown was happening all around us, and they just made this new rule that you cannot drink any alcohol in a bar after 8 o'clock. So they had to basically close the bars. So we arrived in this bar to get our Moscow mules at 7:53, and immediately said, 3 Moscow mules, please. Got them down, and proceeded to have. Then afterwards, we went down for dinner, had a few beers, and what happened next?
My memory escapes me. I can't remember actually what happened next.
Too many beers,
Tom?
Chris.
I can take over. I think we all went back down to the tents quietly, went to bed, and then woke up fresh and ready for our 6K paddle to Spain, I think.
Bullshit.
That's exactly what I remember, actually. Yeah. What I
actually remember
definitely
a story.
don't remember is seeing Tom chasing his tent across the beach at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Because the wind had picked up radically. It was like 15, 20 knots. And Tom went for a pee, and his tent decided to follow him. And then he jumped on his tent, broke a pole, and ended up not knowing where he was, and calling Chris in the middle of the morning saying, "Chris, where are you? I can't find you." So that was
it was definitely the most eventful. It was the most eventful evening of all. Yeah, again, not trying to take too much with me. I didn't take any 10 pegs. Pegging your tent down on a windy night is a must.
But waking up with a monstrous hangover, diving into the ocean helped a lot. But it was quite a powerful offshore that day. And generally, powerful offshores are scary things. But we were literally paddling centimeters away from the shore and trying to keep in close. And it was only 5 kilometers to go to the end. So we made it, albeit with, I think our hangovers had cleared up by that time because there's so much fresh air.
Well, I think the interesting part there, again, purely down to the paddle logger, was the messages that we were getting in the morning from people going, they haven't left yet. Normally they set off at 6:30, 9 in the morning, nothing had moved on the logger. But then also the day before, I think the three of us, we'd all made the same decision that we weren't going to push it to the finish, that we were doing a 5-day expedition. We wanted to keep it that way. Even though the conditions were so good, we probably could have really pushed and done it in a record time. We decided, no, we'll stop those 8K from the finish and have a good night. But reading the messages from people watching us going, oh, they're going to do it. Oh, no, they stopped short. It was just great.
Yeah, it was
amazing.
And I know a lot of this, our chat has been revolved around beer, but I do think we stayed very, like that morning when we had a few and we woke up, but we did have a very serious chat with each other that the winds were strong. And we did have only 6K to go, but we'd all decided to stay close to the shore. And I think there was a serious aspect to it all going along. It was, that stretch really well. And it was definitely safety in mind when we were on the water every day. Even when we crossed that morning, the third morning, the tides were strong and there was a lot of shipping coming in and out. We put the head torches on. You had your reflective jackets on. We were serious when we hit the water.
Well, I mean, I think it's vital whenever you paddle, even if you're going for an hour-long paddle, safety has got to be forefront in one's mind because, and it was always it's always been forefront in my mind because I've done quite a few. I've done 2 sub-certification courses, and the first thing you talk about is safety. And we've just completed an online video course all about sub safety. And the amount of people that get caught out these days by the RNLI is it's just growing and it's scary. So I urge you guys, if you don't know much about your local conditions, do the homework, buy my course. But I just I wanted to ask you guys.
Click the link above. Isn't that what you're supposed to say now?
Yeah, click the link or whatever. Lessons learned. What did you do? I mean, first of all, was this a holiday or was this an expedition?
Both, I think, for me, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I don't know what class is a holiday, but enjoyment was obviously a big factor on a holiday. And I apart from the odd moment, I absolutely loved the start to finish. It was amazing.
Same. I thought it was brilliant. I mean, you talk about, it's a good question, holiday or expedition. I think because of the conditions, it drifted maybe towards the side of a holiday, less expedition. But it could just have easily turned into a hell of an expedition with the wrong wind conditions, inclement weather, all of that kind of thing. So I think we set about it as an expedition.
Yeah, you're right.
But 100% because of the weather in our favour, it was just so much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Best holiday I've ever had. Loved it.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, it is because of the conditions. And I know we had a few bad conditions back in 2015 when we did it. And we actually had to stop halfway and get transported to the end and then paddle back. So we didn't paddle it all in one go. It was just because of the expedition, the conditions. So, yeah, conditions are vital. Really is. And any lessons that you learned?
The rule of 12.
Law of twelfths, yeah. Good man. I don't think you've fully grasped that yet, Chris, but you're saying you have, which is great. So.
There's 12 hours in the morning, 12 hours in the afternoon.
No, that's not it.
And you can drink in any of them.
But I think, you go, Tom.
Yeah, I was just going to say, kit-wise, I really, it was just those few little things I think that were, we did lots of things right, but there were a few things that I would have taken, and I think if you are going to do anything like this, is ask people, because there is nothing better than knowing that the people that have done it before. I think I easily could have got away with a bivy bag. That would have saved me poles, and the silly things like socks wouldn't have taken any more weight off. But the comfort factor, I just think I ask people that have done it before, because it's those little things make a massive difference.
What did you guys think about? Because you both mentioned that you hadn't done a stand-up paddle trip of this nature before. Do you think now that this is game on, you can do anything you want regarding stand-up paddle?
Oh, absolutely, guys. I'm like, when are we heading to Gibraltar? Let's do the next leg.
It's just trying to carve out the time is the tough thing. It's not a question of ability, because I remember when I first set out on this Algarve back in 2015, I was like, I don't even know if we can do it. It's really scary. And then it was, wow, you just plod along, just one stroke at a time.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. I really thank you both for coming. Well, thanks Tom for initiating this whole thing, and it was an amazing trip. It really was cool. So
thanks, guys.
Yeah,
I'd absolutely do it again.
Yeah, Ami. Yeah, amazing experience.
All right, well, sayonara. We'll see you on the next trip.
Look forward to it, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to SUP FM, the #1 podcast for stand-up paddlers wherever you are. If you like what you've heard, please leave us a review on iTunes. Until then, we'll see you on the water.